Hi, I'm Steve Urquhart, co-founder of the Divine Assembly, and I'm here with.
I'm Sara Urquhart. I am also a co-founder of the Divine Assembly.
All right. And so we were thinking it might be fun to talk about someone's first journey, because that does seem to be, all the research people do, probably a good quarter of their total research comes before the first journey. So yeah, let's jump into it. So I will say that I am the world's worst guide, and I'm sitting next to a very good guide.
I think I am a very good guide. I love doing it. I've been doing it for a number of years. There's a preferred way I like to do it, and I think we're going to talk about that. But yeah, I like the idea of I want to go through the motions of if somebody were thinking, I think I want to try magic mushrooms or psychedelics of any kind, how how do I find a guide and what are the questions I should be asking? So Steve's going to play the role of never having done any psychedelics, which is a role. It's a fiction.
Cool. I didn't know we were doing role play. I'm here for
Then
it.
I'm going to be the guide. I'm going to answer how I would answer these questions because
Okay.
a lot of the questions that people come to me with are the same. Everybody wants to know a lot of the same things. So I think that's what this is.
Okay, this is fun. So, I'm gonna pull a lot of this then from we were visiting our son at college, and we were really thinking about doing
This
ayahuasca.
is a long time ago.
Yeah, and so we were sitting in this little cafe thing, and I said, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think?" So yeah, I'm gonna hit you with a lot of the things that we were Googling at that time.
Okay.
Okay. What is a psychedelic journey like?
Oh, that's a great question. So a psychedelic journey taps you into your brain and some insights. And different medicines will do different things. I usually work with magic mushrooms, so that's really maybe where we should focus. But I'm going to answer a lot of these with magic mushrooms. If I were talking about ayahuasca, if I were talking about DMT, if any of these others, I might give slightly different answers because you prepare a little bit differently. They're, different lengths. But
Who are you talking to? I thought we were doing role play here. Why are you looking over there? But this is weird.
Okay, it just got weird.
Okay. So okay, is it dangerous? That's the main thing I want to know. Am I gonna break my brain?
You are not going to break your brain.
What are
Uh,
you looking at?
Stop!
Okay. Am I gonna break? No, good. Am I gonna break my brain?
You're not going to break your brain. For the record, I can see you in the computer, so I'm answering you. Um, okay. No, you are not going to break your brain. Magic mushrooms are very safe, and especially if you mitigate any potential problems that might come up in a mushroom journey, then you can really make sure you create a safe space for yourself. And that's you doing it, or if you have a trip sitter, or if you have a guide, then as a guide, I do a lot of that work to make sure you are safe. I ask the right questions and we go through the motions to make sure that you are prepared for a good journey.
Okay. The only thing I heard in that sentence as a first timer is mitigate problems that might come up.
Yeah.
What problems might come up?
Yeah, there are some things. Most people have heard of a bad trip. And I don't believe in bad trips. I've guided hundreds of people. We've never had a bad trip. And I think what bad trips generally are underguided or unguided experiences. And by underguided, I mean you have a trip sitter or you have a somebody who's there to keep you safe, but they don't know how to walk you through any difficult things happening in your brain. So a good guide will be helping you face anything that might feel difficult. And when I talk about that, I'm any traumas in your life, any difficult experiences, you're going to be going through a lot of those memories, and how they are framed can make a big difference. If it feels like you're being, let's say it's an assault, and you're going through that memory again, you can start to feel like you're in that space again and that you're not safe. But a good guide or a trip sitter will be helping you anchor that to what is real and what is not, that you aren't in danger, you are perfectly safe. And are there things that you need to explore in that memory to help you reframe it so that it's no longer holding you back, it's no longer traumatizing. The other thing a good guide can do is really ask you about that memory. Do you even want to rehash it right now, or is that something you want to move away from?
Well, yeah, that's my that's what I want to ask. Why would I want to relive bad experiences?
Well, if you're living with an experience in your mind, and every time you think of it, it feels scary and it kind of has you freeze up. What happens is every time you think of it, whether you want to or not, you're creating entrenched thinking in your mind. It's like water in a ditch, right? The deeper the water goes, the harder for any water to get up out of that ditch. And psychedelics, magic mushrooms, can help you look at those same memories, but it brings you up out of that entrenched thinking, and you can look at that same experience from a different perspective. And sometimes that helps you work through it. It helps you actually feel peace about it.
Can you give me an example?
Um, do you have an example?
I know that you were talking about Justin and some experiences he had reframing things.
I don't have a good example.
Mhm.
Um, let me think. Yeah, because that's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, he was viewing himself negatively, body shame and all of this, and just going over every aspect of his life and beating himself up on it.
Right. Okay, that's yes. I don't have a specific thing, but yes, someone I've guided a few times, and he's in part of our series, Justin. He will he's had a number of things where he looks at his life, either an experience from his childhood that he's been able to completely reframe and understand. Okay, he was mad at his mother or his stepfather, and with his adult eyes, because a lot of times you're trapped in that. If that happened to you when you were 8, you're kind of trapped in that 8-year-old thinking, even though you're now 35, 45, 55. You're thinking around that event, you're trapped in a childhood mindset. And so as an adult, you can look at those same things and go, oh, my mom was doing her best. My stepfather was kind of an asshole. This is, and you can kind of see it from a different perspective. My stepfather was feeling a ton of stress, and you start to see the world as an adult, because you're bringing that to the table and you're no longer trapped in that 8-year-old mindset.
Yeah. Am I free to step outside of role for a second?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of these experiences, they are from youth. And so, my big one is I saw myself as just this pathetic 10-year-old kid who would just, just cry a lot and just hope someone would save me. And I look back on that, I'm like, geez, what a loser. And so, I even in my mind went back as an adult and I visited that kid, and I said something like, "Hey, things are good. We have a happy marriage. We have good kids. You're not always this pathetic." And that 10-year-old taught me. I mean, he was just pissed. I don't know if you've ever been reamed out by your 10-year-old self, but he's like, "You see me like dad sees me." And he's like, you see me as pathetic. He's like, "That's great that you have all of these people in your life. Who do I have? I mean, I'm just here by myself. I carried the torch alone so you could enjoy all this." And so that just reframed my entire life. It's like that I was doing the best I could. I was
And now
pretty brave.
you can now celebrate that
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah, it really you just kind of twist the knob a little on those your visions of your early self, and I think we see more clearly what's going on, and it just kind of ripples through and changes the trajectory of everything to the present.
So I have a checklist of things. I'm going to start going through that, and then I want you to question any of those things.
Yeah.
So if I'm approached by somebody and they say, I want someone to guide me, I say, okay, let's see if we're a good fit. And this, I usually use an app where we're kind of going back and forth. So I don't do all of this at once, but which allows people to come up with questions and come back to me with different things they've thought through. But
And I'm going to jump in quite often.
yeah, of course. So I start out by telling them I've been guiding for a lot of years. I've guided a lot of people. My preference is to guide people one-on-one. It's just the two of us. I can make exceptions and have made exceptions for intimate pairs, like parent-child or siblings or cousins, childhood friends. I rarely, and I actually won't do romantic couples because I find in those experiences, one of the pair starts caretaking the other.
Okay.
And so it doesn't become a good experience for both of them.
And in that, you're talking people who are just getting into mushrooms or psychedelics.
100%. These are generally, as I'm talking today, I'm talking about people who are brand new in the space.
Okay.
Yeah. If if a couple is super experienced and they want to do a very high dose, I'm happy to do that. Even then, I'm going to really talk them through, should we do it together, or should I do one of you in the morning and one of you in the afternoon? So it's still a shared experience, and you can go home integrating together, but you're not actually under the influence at the exact same time.
Okay.
Okay. It's very important to me that our vibes fit, right? As you're watching, some of you can tell I'm pretty intense. For some people, that feels very scary. It feels like mom, their mother. In other cases, oh, that feels so good. It feels like mom. And so each person has to decide, if when they come to me, do they like my intensity or not? If they want something a little softer, a little gentler, I can help them find those people. And I am not a gatekeeping guide. I am going to help you find the right guide, the right experience.
Yeah. I'd add, if it doesn't, right, you're talking to a potential guide. If it doesn't feel like a warm blanket, if it doesn't feel just
safe,
if it doesn't resonate, something feels kind of off. How about you don't use that guide? I mean,
there's so many out
there
there.
are tons of guides out there, and most of us, we just use the first guide we run across. And you really should interview the guide and make sure it's a good fit, because you're headed to a place where you're going to feel awfully vulnerable, and you want someone you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. So that is a good question to ask, and it is okay, and it shouldn't hurt a guide's feelings if we're not a good fit. If with me, I don't care at all. I want you to have, it is more important to me that you have a great experience than that you have an experience with me. Far more important.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So we know some people who they went, thank heavens, past tense, repeatedly to a guide who had some super secret formula medicine.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, not true. So what happens in those experiences is, well, I'll say it this way. There are limited substances on this earth. And so what is happening in those is somebody's putting a concoction together. And it's usually a form of mushroom, not usually, but the one we're talking about, a form of mushrooms with a little bit of MDMA in it.
That's your secret sauce, the MDMA. I feel so loving.
It usually is
connected.
Cocaine, but it's not okay. So when you work with me or any good guide, they're going to tell you exactly what you're taking, exactly the dose. And if you're especially if you're new, you're not really listening to that. But then after your experience, you should be able to go back to them and say, remind me again what I took, how much did I take? And you should kind of keep that recorded somewhere, because it's going to matter to you if you choose to do substances again down the road.
Because a secret sauce concoction that you're taking, the only reason it would be secret is creating some sort of dependency, that you're dependent on this guide. That's the only place you can get it. And, all of these experiences should be creating autonomy, just strengthening the individual where we aren't dependent on anyone else to access these experiences.
So the other thing I do as a guide, and I mentioned this already, I do generally very high doses. And so if people are coming to me, it's because they're seeking a high dose, they're new to it and want to have their first experience guided, just to make sure they can get through it without any major traumas. But part of what I'm doing is I am saying to people, that was an easy experience for you. In the future, here are the things to think about, but you could do this on your own. You could do this with friends. I don't have any concerns of you doing this, because my job, as you said, is to try and give people autonomy in this space. They're gonna each have their own individual journey, and they certainly don't need my permission. They don't need my help at every step. There are some people, as they take those high doses, they want continued help. They want continued support, and I can give that to them, but they certainly don't need to come to me for every experience.
Okay.
So the other thing I do is I say it's my job to keep you safe, to keep you warm, to keep you whole, and then to get out of the way of the medicine. I do not work with all the extras, the bells, the whistles, the harps, the drums, the eagle feathers.
What if I want that?
Oh, there are great guides out there who do all of those
What if I
things.
want you as a guide, but I've heard of, yeah, I want like the Palo Santo, the smoke.
Yeah,
I want Icaros. I want.
that's awesome stuff. You're going to find another guide to give you that. I'm super practical. I feel like a lot of those things, um, they're they can help you settle into that medicine. And I've seen guides do it in a beautiful way, so I don't have any problems with that. That's just not the way I do it. I feel like this medicine can stand on its own. It doesn't need the extras.
But I've heard all these stories of guides. They can use song, they can use
Yeah.
all of these things to move you through the journey.
There's truth to that, and it provides a different kind of experience. And if you're on a lower dose, and I'll give specific amounts, if you're anywhere, but I call it anywhere between 3 and 4 grams, I call that social dose, meaning you can still interact with people. You're talking, you're listening to the music, it's moving you, it's you're I've heard of that's where therapists really like that amount, because they can talk back and forth and they can keep their people pretty grounded and anchored in that space. I work with hero's dose, which is 5 grams or higher. I've been calling 10 grams a heroine's dose, and we've worked with doses even higher than that. And those doses are very internal. So you put on your eye mask, you listen, you put in music generally, you close your eyes, you're really going inward.
I'm gonna stop you. What if
Yeah,
the first timer, what if I'm inward, I go inward and I'm in a place that just scares me
yeah.
and I get locked in there.
Right. And so having a guide, as a guide, I get you started, and then I leave the room, but I'm close. I can hear you. I leave the room, and I'll come to you every 15 to 30 minutes, and I kind of tap you on the shoulder. So I'll tap you on the shoulder. And if you give me that thumbs up, then I leave you alone. You're in a good place. If I tap you on the shoulder and you're like, or I see a lot of emotion, tears, shaking, something, I'll say, Steve, where are you? Are you in a good place? No, I'm not. Okay, do you want to stay where you are, or do you want to move? Do you want to change the channel? That's the language I use. And then what do you say? Do you want to stay where you are? Do you want to change the channel?
I don't know.
Okay. So in preparing Steve, he wouldn't say, I don't know, because I would have prepared him to say, when I say that, you're going to tell me how you feel. But I'll give you some statistics. About 60% of my people that I guide, when we're in that circumstance, they say, I'll give them the choice. Are you ready to change the channel? And they'll go, no, this feels a little scary. So will you sit next to me? But I think I need to face this. And I'll say, okay. And so I sit with them, some hand on hand, or I'll just sit next to them. I'll sit in the same room with them. They don't even need me to engage all the time. A lot of times they just need to know they are safe. And so I remind them of that. That other 40% says, no, I want to change the channel. And so we do. And of that 40%, the majority of them within 5 to 10 minutes, they go, yeah, I get we've moved on, but I need to go back to that. And they close their eyes and go back to whatever it is. They just needed to know they truly were safe and could move out of it. There's a small percentage that is not ready to face whatever it is they were looking at. And an example is somebody who is facing grief. You're right. They need to mourn somebody in their family, and they just are not ready to face that. It's too hard. It's too sad. And what I see happen is generally that comes up down the road, and it doesn't go away. They just aren't ready right now. And there are so many people in this space that don't understand we have far more control over these journeys than we realize. And I really lean into that I don't want to force the journey, but we can put our thumb on that scale. We can do some things to impact that journey and make it a positive one.
Yeah, that's been my experience is I learned increasingly that I have gas and brakes and a steering wheel.
Yeah.
Whereas at first I was just like blah, I was just there and wherever it took me, which is great. It's beautiful way to explore. And I still just love that. But yeah, light gas, light brake. I don't steer too much at times. But yeah, there definitely are times when I'm like presented with yes, no, yes, where the medicine is just like exploring things with me. And this is just all in my mind. But do I want to have this experience? And so sometimes I've been like, no, this has been too much. I'm too tired. I don't want to look at this right now. But I'd like to do this instead. So, I'd like the flexibility that these medicines, I believe, provide us.
I think that is absolutely true. And, I've been in experiences. I'm thinking of a group experience, and it was a girls' trip. It was a lot of fun. We had an intense day, and we were having an experience that night. My sister-in-law was with me, and we started giggling, and we were laughing so hard. And every time something would come up, either she would say something about my family, so this is the family she's married into, or I would say something about this extended family, and one of or both, we would both ended up by the end of the night, we would both go, no, we're not doing work today, we're just playing. And so we would, something would come up, and we could say, nope, not today, we're not doing that today, it's not going to happen tonight, we are just doing the fun things. And we still talk about it. It's been some time now, and we just still can laugh. And I just can laugh to a point of tears over what we did that night, because it was just so much fun. And that was one of the first times I went, oh, I have far more control than I realized. And it was completely up to me. If I'd wanted to go into some of those, heartbreaking, deeper things, I could have done it, but it would have brought the vibe down for all 15 women there. And I wasn't about to do that. That wasn't what the night was for. I wanted it to be playful, and it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it seems like a lot of my early journeys, they would take me to kind of some sad
Yeah.
places. And now I don't think they ever left me there. I would explore kind of the some of the heartaches and, relationships and things like that. So I was in the forest with a group once, and I was off by myself, and so someone came over and checked on me, and I was kind of deep in it and just bawling, just tears and snot. And I was a mess, and so he's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I think I'm okay." And so he's like, "You sure you don't?" And I think that he was kind of concerned that here we are out in the forest, and maybe I'd been in the place enough, and so he said, "I brought you something. I think you might like it." So he handed me a rock. And so he said, I'll leave you to it. So I'm just like fixated on that rock. It was the coolest rock ever. And so, my mind went a different place and it was lovely. And so afterwards, I'm like, how did you know? How did you do this? He's like, I don't know. I just was walking over to you and figured you were deep enough, and
Yeah.
I saw a rock down there and handed you a rock.
Well, and that's a great point. One of the things I do when I guide people is I suggest that they have some kind of token. It could be a rock, it could be a photo, it can be a feather, it could whatever. It can have long time meaning or it can have brand new meaning, right? No meaning at all, but something to kind of help ground you. Again, I have a lot of people bring those when I guide with them, and a small percentage ends up needing it, 10 to 20%. But those who bring it and are glad they have it are glad they have it. That rock ended up being a really good thing for you. So sometimes those tokens, those elements end up being a very good grounding source. They're not needed for everybody, but again, if you're thinking about doing this yourself, here are some things to be thinking about as you prepare this or as you're looking for a guide. Another thing I do is I do a day session. I tell people to plan on 5 to 7 hours, and that's because we're doing such a large dose. If we do the larger dose we do, the longer the experience.
How do
So,
you, how do you prefer doing it? Because I've done it a bunch of different ways. What's the best way someone should take that first journey?
there is no best way, meaning there's no right or wrong way for everybody. You need to figure out what feels right to you. And we're good examples of that. From the very start, Steve loved the idea of group journeys and all those bells and whistles we talked about, and the unknown and the people. And he would say, Sara, come do that with me. And I'd be like, that sounds horrible. And I couldn't tell him why. I didn't have the language for it. I just said, no, I don't think so. And I got experienced enough with these sacraments and these medicines that I finally said, yes, let's go do a group journey. And I hated it. The guide was wonderful. The people were wonderful. But what are you going to say?
Go ahead, finish that.
Autistic brain was overstimulated by all of
Because
it.
it was awesome. There were some cool cats there, and there was this great musician. And I mean, he was a professional
World
musician,
class.
famous group. You would have heard of them. And so at one point he was going around and he had a crystal harp that he was, playing for people and just waving it,
Standing over them.
standing over you. And so I love that stuff where you just feel the waves
Oh
of the
gosh.
music. They just resonate, vibrate inside of you. So I'm like, ah, this is fantastic. Then I'm waiting to see, but I'm also
No,
I'm also kind of cracking up. I'm like, what's Sarah gonna think of this? So he comes over, and so he starts to strike the instrument, and she's just like,
I'm like, no,
no.
no. And he was respectful. He moved on. But all of those things that helped Steve in that space, they actually pull me out of it. The sage that they're burning. Suddenly that's all I can smell. That harp over me. I can't, it's so intensely in my spine, that vibration. And when they did the sound bowls, I literally had to leave the room. So all of those things, somebody crying across the way, I had a very difficult time compartmentalizing all of those things and processing them, and it just kept pulling me out. And the more I'm here in the space, the now I understand how I can do larger group journeys and the kinds of parameters I need. And I just can't do it with everybody. I can't do it in any circumstance. Seems like you are a lot more flexible and can throw yourself in just
Yeah.
about any circumstance. Is there a right or wrong? Did he do it right and I do it wrong? Vice versa? No. What was right for me mattered, and I listened to myself, which meant I had some really good experiences. And now, because I listen to myself, I'm trying to give other people permission to listen to themselves. You listen to yourself and have these great experiences.
Yeah.
So that's really what needs to happen here. As you're talking to a guide and they're going through all of these things, you should be gathering information to determine, does this feel right for me?
Yeah, and we're just talking our opinions based on our experience. But I would tell someone that again, interview the heck out of that guide, get a feel for that guide. How does it go? How much does everyone do the same thing? Is it because I love the chaos. I mean, you give me, I mean, again like doing it by myself and all this, but you throw me in just if I have a journey in just a chaotic setting where there's all the music, all these interesting people and stuff, I'm just fascinated. But Sarah, yeah, she just now she's journeying more with some people, just a small set, her tightest
Usually
circle.
people I really know.
But I can just see guides that would have told her, no, this is how we do it. You just need to release, you just need to surrender to no, she just needed to not do it
Yeah.
because that's not who she is. And so, if you have a guide that isn't listening to what you're saying, right? That do you like chaos? Do you want it to be super predictable? Do you want it to be quiet? Do you want it to be loud? Because you're ultimately in charge. And if you're not in charge, then that might be a bit of a red flag because it's your experience. You really should be in charge.
Yeah, red flag is, for me, that means really what I think. I'm going to reinterpret what Steve just said, which is it's that guide may not change the way they do it just for you. And they shouldn't necessarily if they do group guided experiences. But it may mean you need to find someone who does one-on-one, or who's willing to do a more personal experience just for you, because that feels too scary, it feels unsafe. And it's a weird thing to say, I feel unsafe, but it's because you don't really know what you're stepping into. But trust yourself. If there's something about it that feels unsafe, maybe don't go there. And you should be asking, what does touch feel like? What are the rules of touch, especially in a group? And the rules should be no touching. There's or very little touching. There's some I'm going to even step back on that. There's some groups and they're very curated, and it becomes a big kind of cuddle session, and platonic touch is safe and we do this. But you need to know that going in. You need to know those things before you even arrive. So you're not looking around going, oh, that's not comfortable for me. And now you have to remove yourself, which can feel awkward if you don't know all these people. So some of those things should be divulged to you beforehand. And if they're not, that to me is the red flag. If there's any secretive stuff, or where, again, going back to what you're taking, you should have control of what you take and when. If someone's magically coming up with what they think you should be taking, I don't think that's smart. I'm always, even when someone has been dosed up and I think they need more, I still give them the option. I'm saying that because they haven't fully dropped in. If they haven't fully dropped in, they can still consent to whether they want to be dosed up further. And so if they're so far gone they can't consent, then I'm not dosing them up anymore, right? That's already the line.
Okay, so let's say that I, the first timer,
Okay.
something isn't sitting quite right with me about the ceremony.
Okay.
How free am I to talk about it?
Is this beforehand, during, or after?
Does it matter?
I
But
mean,
the scenario I threw out is during.
okay, so you're in the middle of it and you don't like something that's
Well, no,
happening.
it's yeah, sure, let's do that. I
Okay.
was saying after, but let's do that. I'm in the middle of a ceremony and I'm just not sure about this.
Then you absolutely should be advocating for yourself. You can ask questions and you can say, let's say it is something about touch that feels uncomfortable to you. You should be able to say, uh, it's even if every other person in the room is okay with that cuddle puddle, I am not. I do not want to be touched. I'm not comfortable with that. You can continue to advocate for yourself. And if anybody's pushing you hard to participate, that is a problem.
Okay. Okay. Um, and then after I'm like, okay, something went down. I'm just not quite sure about this. Should I keep that to should I not?
Yeah.
But what if I'm not sure if it's
Okay, so first of all, do what normal people do and ask. Ask your friends. Talk to your friends, even if they're not experienced with these altered states. You still ask your friend. You say, "Hey, this thing happened. I'm not sure how I feel about it." And that's a big part of what you should be doing is processing the experience. We call that integration. And my integration conversations with the people I guide are very long and very intense, and we'll get a little more into that. But if you're just brand new, if you know it was wrong and you know it was dangerous, yes, still talk to your friends, talk to the people around you, talk to people who have had more experiences in this space to say what just happened, because maybe it's something that they can help you reframe and you go, oh, okay, I was jumping to conclusions, or I was thinking this was something that it wasn't. But if you still go, no, that still does not feel right to me, it does not feel good, you should you should absolutely talk about it. And if you are assaulted, you absolutely should be talking about it. You don't keep that to yourself. You don't keep that hidden. Any traumas that happen to you, we call that ceremonial trauma. And it can happen. And you want to guard yourself from these shamans that are abusive. And the way we guard ourselves is by talking about it, by making it public. And so you're talking in the community, you're talking to people that you have learned to trust. You're talking to people who aren't in the community. But yes, we do not keep it quiet. We're not keeping it quiet because, ooh, it might make a bad name for psychedelics. No, we are protecting the individual over these things. And that is the only way to keep this space safe.
okay?
Okay.
Amen. Very good. So yeah, what are some of the huge breakthroughs, right? Because we've talked about a lot of the nuts and bolts, we've talked about safety. What are the kinds of breakthroughs that people might receive, but I'm going to say even in preparation that they might look for, that they might kind of seek?
Yeah, it's if you have things in your life that are stopping you from having a full life, and that would might mean things like depression. You're just so caught up in things that are just making you sad, you can't get out of bed. um Anxieties, people with crippling anxiety, their world is getting smaller and smaller because what if something goes wrong? um the Something like OCD, it's stopping you from living a full life because you're having to go through the rituals that OCD forces on you. You have PTSD or past traumas that are continuously stopping you from living that full life you want. All of those things can be addressed. And when you are talking to a guide and interviewing a guide, they should be asking you about past traumas. They should be asking you about some of your medical history, including current medications that you are on. Those are, if they're not asking you about those things, that also is a red flag, and you want to be careful. But you want to be honest with them about what you are taking currently, what things might come up, so that they are better prepared. I had an experience. It was kind of back to back. These two women, they, both of them about 10 years younger than me. They live in, near where I live, within an hour or two where I live. They both have kids, educated, they similar to me in many ways. In both cases, I was about 10 years older than them. But one of them came to me and she had these crazy epiphanies about patriarchy and this religion she had been in that was, super fundamental. It was a fundamental religion and these weird rules she had to live by. And her mind just was able to challenge all of those things and expand it. I held such good space for her. I was really proud of myself. And it wasn't a month later, I was guiding someone else, very similar resume as the first one, but she was a person of color. And I was holding that same kind of space, and she started having some of those same epiphanies about patriarchy and her role in the world. And then it became all about race. And did not, I could hold space, but I couldn't give her that full support that I could give the other woman, because she and I, the first woman and I, shared the same race. Second woman and I did not. So what I have done is, if I think there might be something that comes up and the person's talking to me, I sometimes will bring in an assistant, someone else who wants to learn how to guide or is, curious about, and I will bring them into a part of the journey with permission from the person being guided. And sometimes that person can hold better space because they share that commonality. Sometimes we're guessing and that thing doesn't even come up. But again, because we have some influence on it, we can, if that person knows they need to sift through some of this stuff, we can bring somebody else in who can help with that portion of it.
It creates a lot of questions.
Okay.
So there you said because you didn't share the same race, you were less able to be a great guide.
Well, in the same way, I recently guided a man close to my age. We share a former religion, but he's gay, he's divorced, and he came out later in life, came out of the closet later in life. I couldn't hold the same kind of space for him that somebody who shared a lot of those intersectionalities that maybe could have. I guided him and it was great. We had a great experience. And the same is true of that first person of color. She had a great experience. But a lot of what I ended up doing is just making all the notes for them. And I'll talk about how I do that and what those notes look like. But then she had to take all of those things to her therapist and have that be part of her integration, because it would have been really inappropriate for me to speak to her or to speak to the man, the gay man, to go, oh, I know what it's like to come out of the closet late in life and your children are mad at you. I don't know any of that. I don't know what that's like. So I can hold space for it. I can take note of it. I can be empathetic and say, oh, that sounds difficult. And I can give them honest feedback, and I can give them, I can be a kind ear, but I can't hold the same kind of space.
Yeah, it's
right?
such a fascinating topic because, like therapists, when we're not in psychedelics, is it better if you're dealing with a lot of religious trauma or, whatever the trauma is, do you seek out a therapist who has similarly experienced that, so they know it firsthand, or they have a lot of, clients who do that, and
They
so
have experience with it. So, yeah, even for me, even if they don't have a ton of experience, that therapist didn't go face that same trauma, but they've worked with a lot of people who have, that's enough for me, right? That they bring more to the table. So, it's you can't find someone who's exactly going to line up with everything you're going to deal with. Which is why, and I don't know that that matters, but two things on that. One, with the Divine Assembly, which we mentioned at the very start, I do think it matters that there are guides within sub communities. So we offer a discounted or scholarshiped uh, access to our guide training courses that people in these underserved communities that they can take the courses. I want people in those communities to have guides they can go to that share a lot of those same things. That has mattered to us from the very start. Again, I will guide anyone who feels comfortable with me and wants to come to me, but if there is a better guide for them, I want them to have that better guide.
so that would be holding space. You can hold space for kind of anything that comes up,
Yeah,
but I'm using you as a surrogate
great.
for any guide.
Yep.
If you know you have one specific thing, right? If it is racial discrimination, if it is religious trauma, then you really want to talk with your guide about that and say, this could come up. Um, if I'm looking for the first time and I know, okay, I have some religious stuff in my past and it's a peculiar religion, um, what I want, if that might come up, do I want someone who knows the nuances of that peculiar religion and has suffered similar trauma to me?
Right. And as we have said multiple times, there's not a right or wrong. I'm not saying you must do it this way, you have to do it that way. I'm not even saying you should do it. I'm saying what feels right to you. And would you feel safer with someone who has shared some of those things? Um, and even when you're talking to somebody about it, I will flat out say, when someone says, oh, some of my traumas, I'll say, here are my traumas. I have childhood trauma. I have religious trauma. I have some marital trauma. And I have some sexual trauma. Those are things in my life. I'm not giving them details. I'm not telling them, I'm not burdening them with my woes. But if they go, oh, yeah, some of those are mine, okay, I feel a little more comfortable. Because what you want is when you take these substances, many people can really put their foot on the brakes. They have a hard time dropping in with high anxiety, or with, some of the things we talked about. And the more comfortable you feel with your guide, the easier it will be to drop in. And if you're going to spend some time, if you're going to, and it's a whole day, if you're going to spend the money, if you're going to do you're going through this process, you want it to be as successful as possible. You want to get the most out of it as possible.
To follow up on
Okay.
that, get the most out of it. I think that what I've seen, um, I've been in a lot of different ceremonies, a lot of situations,
Yeah.
and some people tend to get disappointed because they really anticipated X. They really, right beforehand, it's what do you want? What's your intention? And so their intention is X, and they didn't get X. So it was a bummer. It was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Talk to that, will you? Intentions and
Yes. So you should have an intention when you start this process. And that I try not to be too specific with it. I encourage people to not have, I need to fix this. I'm really mad at a teacher from high school because they wronged me in this way. You can be that specific, but your brain and the sacrament, the medicine, it doesn't necessarily follow your intention. It's a very common phrase that people say, you get the journey you need, not the journey you want. But it's okay to put those thoughts in your brain and to go, here are some of the things I would love to stop thinking about, or I would love to understand a little better or understand a little differently. So, but what I do see is when people, the more experienced people get, I hear they go from that very specific kind of, I want to stop being mad at my mom, to, I wish I could understand my familial relationships better. Or I'm open to what the medicine wants to teach me. I'm open to really understanding what my place is in this world. Those are more broad, they're more general, and can lead to some better outcomes because you're not so focused on ticking this exact box. But you're like, oh, if any of these 100 boxes got ticked, that could be really interesting and lovely for me. And so being a little more open to that and not having such a hard expectation. And I'll give an example. Going back to Justin, we mentioned him earlier. He's one of the episodes that you can watch on this shift series. He goes through his first experience and he comes out of it going, I don't know if it was really life changing. I think maybe it can become life changing, but I don't know. He's just back and forth on, is this even life changing? And I'm laughing as his guide going, oh my gosh, it is so, I can see the changes happening in you. And because we kept the integration going, and maybe let's talk about that next, because, and what integration can look like. But because I knew we were going to keep it going, I knew what it was going to feel like. I'm like, oh, Justin. And then it wasn't even, it's not very long before he's like, oh yeah, I can see the changes happening in my life and I can see what is happening. And so part of that is with your guide is they're helping you reframe it. I talked with somebody very recently who was talking about her experience, and it was unguided and she was in the space alone and she was having these thoughts, and she kept saying to me it was a bad experience, a bad trip. And I'm listening to her going, it doesn't sound like anything was bad. You faced some discomfort, but she doesn't have anybody to integrate with. She doesn't have an integration plan. And so the more she's thinking about it, she's focused on things and she's saying it's a bad trip. And because she's framing it as a bad trip,
Because she cried a lot. She was sad. I was there with her.
yeah. And because she framed it as a bad trip, she's looking for things to validate this was a bad trip. It wasn't a bad trip. It's just an unprocessed one. And I really feel like she needs an integration coach, because that person would help her understand what she just faced and what she just saw. And without that, you don't have the language. You don't know what to think of this.
Yeah, so let me broaden out where you're going with this. Do you get it all in the first journey, right? Because should you just, okay, I'm changed. I did one journey, I'm a new person.
And done. Absolutely. That is very, very rare. One and done is very rare. So let me first start by saying, because I'm already talking about future journeys as we're starting this part of the conversation. Let me clarify. There is nothing addicting about these things.
By that, you mean mushrooms?
Yes. Their mushrooms are not addictive, and they're a lot of work.
Because there are addictive things in the space.
Some of these substances.
Ketamine can be addictive, MDMA can be addictive, Pape can be addictive.
Absolutely. So they're not all of these substances are not created equal. And I started out this whole thing by saying that you need to understand each substance and you need to understand what you're wanting out of each one and how you're going to interact with it. So when we're talking about mushrooms, they're not addictive and they can be so much work that I just laugh at that when, the idea of being in mushrooms, so, as if they were addictive. the work of that.
It's too much work.
It's just, there's nothing appealing about that, which is why they're not addictive. One of the reasons.
Yeah, and so a big part of the science of addiction, you are looking at human reactions, you're looking at lab mice also. And so, you give mice cocaine, they will take cocaine until they die.
Yeah.
And a lot of, that's how we test addiction, is how much do animals that share a lot of our genetics go after it. And mice, if they hit psilocybin, they're done. They don't want it again because they're like, that was not a pleasant experience because they didn't integrate it. Maybe if the mice integrated it.
Maybe if they worked with me.
But these are, these are real tests, real science testing how addictive certain things are. And, you look on the scale of how addictive is something, and mushrooms are just toward the very bottom of that.
And from my experience, when I started out, I was taking it, and I was really working through traumas. I was working through all of those I listed. I was working through some of that. And then I would take it to my therapist. And again, we're about to get more into that integration. Now I'm looking for it. When I take it, I'm looking for more creative experiences. I'm looking for fun experiences. I'm looking for spiritual experiences. I still do some of the healing, but that matters less because I'm working through those things and I'm not being re-traumatized with anything. And so I have fewer things to work through, and which makes more space for these other creative, spiritual experiences.
Awesome. Before
Yeah.
you move on, one thing is sticking with me. You said that we should have intention going into ceremony into the space. What if I just want to, I've
Yeah.
heard a lot about psychedelics, I just want to see what they're about.
Yeah, that is a fine intention. That is one. You just want to get your feet wet. You want to see what that feels like. You want to feel how you react to it. It's a perfectly fine intention.
Another thing I would add to this part of the conversation is when I first was journeying, I would see something and I'd just fixate on it. And then I'm like, what was that thought I had that was so important? I need to remember that. So I'm just kind of looking backwards on these thoughts. And, part of something that I've learned in the space, and I talk with others, it seems like others learn, there's just a lot of stuff coming at us. And it's just nice to go, that was interesting, that was cool.
Right.
And if I see something that I'm like, okay, I want to come back to that, but things are coming on really fast, I'll just drop some rocks, and mentally I'll just put a cairn there, and I'm like, I'm going to come back to this at some point. And maybe it will be that journey, probably it won't. And so I really like emphasizing to people who are about to try psychedelics, who are just starting, it doesn't have to all be one ceremony.
No.
It doesn't have to be 10, doesn't have to be 100, that we continue to learn. We're laying out a broad, solid foundation so we can see more, learn more.
Yeah. So I want to talk about integration now. So when I work with my people, I say 5% is the prep, 5% is the journey, and 90%, don't know what that was about. 90% is the integration. And the more you integrate, the more the lessons will come. And so your integration plan and how you integrate will impact dramatically how much you get out of this journey. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute, and then I'm going to talk about continuous integration and what that looks like.
Yeah, because defend those numbers, 5, 5, and 90. Yeah, that 90 has a lot. So
and there are some people that where it's really 25% preparing, 25% doing the journey, and then they do a little integration after, so it's 50%, and they wrap up within a few weeks and they're done. When I'm working with people, as I've stated, we do high doses. So part of what I'm asking is we talk about what an integration plan looks like. Do they have a therapist? Not everybody does. You don't need one, but if you have one, that changes things a little for me. It moves things off my shoulders and onto somebody who's getting paid to do this kind of work with you. And then who is your support network? Do you have family? Do you have friends that you can talk to about this? And what kind of processor are you? I'm an audio processor. I work through my problems by talking about them. And sometimes Steve's a big part of my experience of processing things, whether it's on substances or not. Sometimes I'm just talking at him because less to get his reaction and more to hear myself say it. And then even before I'm done, I'm like, oh no, I know what I need to do. That is the way my mind works, is I need to hear it. I need to hear myself say it. So a lot of my integration is back and forth with Steve, back and forth with friends, back and forth with my therapist. There are some people who they integrate in through journaling. And even if you're not a big journaler, journaling around your experience can be vital, because you continue to get these downloads and no one else is there catching that for you. And so you putting it on paper or putting it in um, uh, an app where you're speaking into it. Somewhere where you're capturing these ideas. And let me give you an example, or tell you, when I'm doing one-on-one guiding with my people, as they're coming out of it, so they've had this very internal experience, they've kept their earphones in, their eye mask on, they've had a very quiet, sad, full of emotions, happy, sad, it's usually all the emotions. And as they're coming out of it, a lot of people get chatty. And so I just pull up with my computer, I sit across from them, and I just start typing. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to capture their phrases, their words. They're talking about people I've never heard of, because sometimes I don't know these people. Or it's, even if they're my friend, I'm like, I don't know who that is in their life. It doesn't matter that I know. And I'm not saying, who is that? Clarify to me. We're not having a conversation, right? I'm just trying to capture their words, because the things that they're saying, that is going to matter as they fully integrate. And I don't need to be comfortable in the conversation. It's not about me. I don't need to know the specifics.
Yeah. The name John Carnival, they'll remember what it
They'll
was.
know what it is, and they know who John is. And so I don't need to know that. Sometimes over time, oh, I figured out who it is. Here's that son that they've been talking about. I don't know who, they were half the time they're calling him son, half the time they're calling him John, and then half the time they're using another nickname. So until I know it's all three are the same person, I'm kind of creating these different things. So as they go back to some of those same topics, I can continue to add more under that topic. And what ends up happening with a lot of my people, and this is what you can get with a one-on-one, is a lot of those people, or a lot of my clients, they end up with 5 to 10 pages of notes. And they'll go back through, and in some cases, they're pushing it straight to their therapist saying, here's the stuff we're going to talk about. And in other cases, they're looking at it going, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about some of that. I even had those thoughts, and maybe it would come up over time, but sometimes it's just lost. You know how memories are. So if I can capture that for them, they have a really good jump start. And if they can continue to capture that over the next few days, you don't have all the insights in those moments. Sometimes you have to take that topic, that person, let's say John, your son, and you have this in you're thinking about him. Well, it might take time with your therapist. It might take walks and conversations with other friends to go, oh, this is how I have wronged John, and this is how I need to repair that. And it might take weeks, it might take months to finally come to those conclusions. All the journey does is it opens you up to those ideas. And it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily walk away with all the answers. You walk away with bigger questions, more important questions that you then need to process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you can journal, if you and you can have someone to talk to, when you and I started psychedelics, I had a therapist, you did not. But it was very important that we have continued, we were each other's first integration partners. And we've now been doing it for we're coming up on a decade now, but we have continued, even with our therapists, we continue to be each other's first and foremost integration partner. And that has been fun because there will be times when Steve comes home from a journey that he's done without me, and we do that plenty where we're kind of doing our own thing. And he'll come home with all these thoughts and insights and ideas, and I'll go, wait a minute, isn't that something that happened in that journey with that in the basement of that guy? And we kind of go through, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm able to help him connect those dots. He might get there on his own, but he might not. And so because I have heard all his experiences, I can help him connect those dots, and vice versa. He does that for me plenty.
Yeah, I think the way psychedelics work is, I think they really, you know, are trying to bring forward parts of our brain that don't know language, hence the intense imagery. And our very first journey, there was, man, I was kind of given the Rosetta Stone of who I am, right? And it didn't make any sense to me, but I just saw that, okay, in relationships with people I love, I bring in some sort of toxicity that just destroys everything. And right, so I'm like, okay, well, that feels pretty shitty. I'm God, I'm the toxic avenger. And so, but the thing is, I don't know, medicine, it's always been, it's very kind to me. So I'm like, all right, this is something that's real, right? Because it was a glorious vision. It was amazing. I was feeling so much love. Then I did something mentally that just destroyed all of it. My God, what is that? And so then, I would share that part of the journey. Then I'm telling someone, I'm like, as I'm integrating, I'm like, I think everyone has a cup that holds love. I don't think my cup has a bottom on it. I don't think I can hold love. And so I just, all of these pieces, and, it was great help integrating to talk it through. But, what these pieces were saying, and these people didn't know the language, is it led me all of these things where people are like, yeah, maybe you should go to a therapist and lay out these different things. So I laid them out to a therapist who has professional
Finally.
training and says, oh yeah, you have borderline personality disorder. So all these things that I was seeing in vision, that I think my brain was just saying, dude, this is what you do in relationships with people you really love. You do bring in this toxicity born from the fact that you can't hold love, you can't believe that people really love you. And so, hence my thing about, it doesn't all happen on that first journey. It doesn't happen in the first 10. It happens through conversations where, we're all kind of concluding, yeah, there's something going on with my mind that it twists things. And so
It's very loved. He just didn't feel it. And so, yeah, he's had to learn some very specific kinds of skills so that he can show up and feel love and be loved by those around him.
And so, I don't know how it works, but I think this is my subconscious, the smartest parts of my brain. We call them lizard brain, monkey brain, which I disagree with. I think they're the oldest, wisest parts. Our gut, right, which knows a lot because it's been
Pre-language.
around. So they're just showing me all of these things. And what they're saying is, look into this, dude, look into this. We can, this is a burden, we can do better than this. And they led me to the point where, like, yeah, there's something there. I need someone with professional degrees and language to look into this. And so for me, it is a very stepwise thing. And I kind of hate the messages that are out there that do seem to portray it's one and done.
Yeah.
And we can have some great revelations.
Well, and I think that comes from someone saying, "Oh my gosh, I used to stutter and now I don't." Well, that's one little piece of that person's life. Oh my gosh, for me, I had this major trauma that I was able to work through. Well, that's great, but it doesn't take care of everything. It takes care of that one trauma. So it does feel for some of us like a miracle pill
Liberated
because
something.
it's helping something, one thing. But if you have 100 things you need to work through, or 20 things, I'm not saying it, you have 20 things you need to work through, you might get 1.5 of them done in a ceremony. You might get 5 of them done. I don't know, but it doesn't take care of everything. And that's the issue. And what happens in your first journey for most of us is it opens us up to the possibilities. And we go, okay, I can understand where this is going to take me. I can understand what this is better. And once you're there, then you can really start to navigate it and understand. I really believe these substances are training wheels. They are teaching us how to do things. For me, as an autist, I did not grow up understanding my emotions. I was pushing them down. I was rejecting my emotions and like pushing through them. And on these substances, I've really begun to understand the benefits of emotions, what to do with them, how to deal with them, how to feel safe feeling them. And it's taken a lot of work to understand what that feels like and what that is. I'm so grateful now that I understand emotions better. And what comes naturally to some people was very, very difficult for me. So I'm just grateful.
Do you have psychedelic experiences now without psychedelics?
100%. So because they're like trading wheels, what I will do at times is go, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. I am about to face this problem. How would the mushrooms do that? How would they have me think about that? And I'll really spend some time, and it might take a little more work, but it's like training wheels. So I know where I need to go because the training wheels have shown me, but can I do it without the substance? And a lot of times yes, I'll resolve the issue completely without the substance. Sometimes I'll resolve it 75% and then I'll kind of hit that wall. I might be able to work through it, or I can take a little microdose or a small amount and work through it faster. I have some therapists who are doing one of these episodes, so go seek that out. But where they talk about, when their clients are taking psychedelics, they just know they're on the super highway. It's going to be a lot faster and the changes are really going to stick. That is what substances can do. So I'm going to, as we're finishing up, but I want to give a few more tips and tricks for anyone who's wanting to do this alone or looking for a guide. So things like, these are very practical things. The day of your experience, have a small meal, not heavy. It should be, it could be kind of raw foods or simple foods. You don't want heavy, eggs Benedict, but you might want some carbs.
Greasy hamburger.
Right, but you might want some pancakes, or you might want some oatmeal. You want, some fruit. So something that feels like that. It is a diuretic, so you are going to go to the bathroom more. You have to pee more, so make sure there's a good and clean access to a bathroom. It feels easy and safe. And drink. Since you're losing liquid, you need to be drinking a lot more. A guide will be helping you do that. If you're trip sitting for someone, make sure they're drinking. It's okay to have comfort things around you, a pillow, a blanket, those things. Some people get very cold, even though it's not cold. So make sure you have things where you can feel warm, you can feel comfortable, because if you're just focused on being cold, you kind of lose the experience. That token, we talked about that. And then prep yourself for after the experience. Do not of course, do not drive while altered. If someone else needs to pick you up, that's fine, or stay in your space until you are sober and can drive. But then have some things prepped at home. And try to make sure it's a quiet night where you don't have to go anywhere. If you have a partner, have somebody, friends you want to be with, make sure they're around. Maybe have some food in the fridge. So that's something you don't have to think about. And comfort foods are nice after the fact. You've gone through a lot of emotions. You're really still thinking about things. So having either DoorDash ready to be delivered or something in the fridge ready to be warmed up, something in a crock pot that you come home to. Some people are, really hungry. They're ravenous. And so they're looking for that food. So make sure it's something that feels comfortable to you. I had a friend recently, he went home and he had a DoorDash order ready for some sushi, and he like tripled it and ordered it. He had ordered in $150 worth of sushi, which might not have been the best call, but it made him laugh afterwards. He's like, okay. And he could do that. That was not a big deal, but it just was funny how he's like, oh, I'm so hungry, and just ordered that all in. So have all of that in place. And then in addition, the 72 hours, there are a few marks for you. At 72 hours afterwards, that's a really beautiful kind of sacred time where those dreams might be vivid, or as you're coming out of sleep, your thoughts are pretty clear. So to have something to write, a paper and pen near you at all times for 72 hours, because you're just continue to have more and more of those thoughts. And then the next mark is the 3-week mark. You have these big ideas, these big things, insights. And if you hit that 3-week mark and nothing has changed, that can feel depressing, and people kind of fall into depression. And so that there's that magic window between your experience and that 3-week mark, where make some changes, right? Do something to make a difference. Do something to change some of your behaviors. This is only life changing if you're really doing the work to change your life. And so I have seen people, when I say it's 90% integration, I have seen people integrate that experience for months, and then maybe they'll take another small dose. Maybe something else opens up in therapy where, it continues. And I've seen people integrate experiences for years, and you're just building. It's just a foundation, and then you're building on top of it, and you're just adding bricks. It can be a really beautiful experience. So if it's calling to you, I recommend it. If it's not, don't chase it. It's not something everybody needs, but those of us who need it should have safe and easy access. And that is why we're trying to bring this up out of the basements, out of the, into the light, where people can do this safely and without the gatekeepers that are out there. So
Awesome.
with that, good luck. If you have questions, whatever platform you're seeing this on, put your questions in there and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being a part of this, and good luck on your journey.